All right, let's try and make sense of what is likely to take place. Joining us there, as you can see, is our guest, Mkhosi Radebe, who's the director at MC Radebe Associates Incorporated. Mkhosi, great to have you on the SABC. Thanks for your time and patience. My goodness, what a twist to the story. And even though, yes, this has provided some information, I'm afraid it's also raised a whole host of new questions. Top of mind, I imagine, for many people is, what are the implications for this 23-year-old, given the fact that the department says, of course, she must have been an infant at the time and can't be held directly accountable for what's taken place? What's your informed take around how this is all likely to unfold?
Good morning, Ayanda, and good morning to your viewers. May I make this following disclaimer before I go directly to deal with your questions, that we are mindful of the pending investigation by the Department of Home Affairs, and my commentary in this regard should not be seen to preempt those investigations. And two, that we are not privy to any of Chidimma's official documents in this regard. Wow, Ayanda, what an issue. May I start by first saying this matter was not supposed to have been as controversial as it is, because the law is quite clear. For you to be a South African, you need to be born in the Republic, and at least one of your parents must be South African. So that much is clear, is the general rule. And that's where we are, so to speak.
Sure. All right. So, and I appreciate your prelude around what we know and what we don't know, and that's well received. However, if this prima facie evidence does turn out to be substantial, I wonder still the impact this would have on Chidimma, because we also know that the laws in this country and other places are not retrospective, if you know what I mean.
Yes. The impact is huge because there is a cloud now hanging over her, and it will be prudent for the Department of Home Affairs to deal with their investigations expeditiously, because, and you should have seen, Ayanda, the amount of confusion and anger that this matter has sparked. So the cloud is clear. At the moment, I would say from my vantage point, her participation in this pageant must be suspended, because the Miss SA pageant leadership must have actually investigated this and vetted this, so that there is no controversy around her, because she is indeed affected.
It's interesting you say that, because my understanding actually is that Miss SA is a private entity. In other words, it's not actually run by the state. And I imagine that comes with its own kind of, let's call it, privileges. The Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture is apparently calling for the state to take over the running of this pageant. Does it matter if, this is a government-run initiative, at least insofar as compelling them to have as a requirement being a South African in order to participate in this pageant?
It shouldn't, Ayanda, because when you run a competition that you call a South African-oriented competition, you must make sure that you regulate properly and that you ensure that whoever that is going to participate in the particular competition is South African. As it stands, from my vantage point, from the reports you've been making and the allegations of fraud that have thrown the spanner into the works, is that prima facie, from where I'm sitting, Chidimma is not a South African, and she should not be allowed to be participating in this pageant in the first place.
Sure. Have we dealt with a case like this before, Mr. Radebe? A situation where someone is born in the country 2 decades ago, it then emerges that their citizenship may have been off the back of fraudulent documents. Do we have precedent around typically how the legal system in South Africa deals with something like this?
We do not have a precedent that is similar, but there is a case of Tebogo Khoza, who was born in South Africa, and the parents were said to have been from Swaziland. And then the department refused to register his birth into the population register because seemingly the parents were not South African. So when I look at the law, the law is clear as to who is supposed to be South African. You have to be born in South Africa. One of your parents has to be South African, and that particular birth has to be registered. Now, where there are allegations of fraud, it makes matters worse because should it be found that there was fraud conclusively, then it will cast aspersions over the participation of Chidimma in this particular pageant. So I urge the Department of Home Affairs to act with speed and conclude this particular investigation so that she can be freed, whether she can participate or not. And then it will stop the anger that we see in South Africa over this matter.
Yeah, and what makes matters more pressing is that the final ceremony for Miss South Africa is this weekend. So we literally have a few days to put a conclusion to what's taken place. While the storm may have started around the pageant, of course it seems the story is going to have much wider reaching implications for Chidimma and possibly her family. I found it very interesting that the Home Affairs Department yesterday said something along the lines of Chidimma must have been an infant at the time and so she can't be held liable for what's taken place. But given what you're saying, it almost seems inevitable that she's going to be affected by this.
Absolutely. It does not matter whether she was an infant. It does not matter whether she did not partake herself in the unlawfulness. The law is clear. If you are born in the Republic, in fact, let me put it this way, people are under an illusion that by mere fact that you are born at a South African hospital, then it makes you a South African citizen. It doesn't. You have to be born in the Republic, and one of your parents at least must be a South African. That is a general rule. Unless then you can depend on other things like naturalization, which is not the case in this particular matter.
And just, I suppose, for the benefit of our viewers, please help us to understand what that means. What is naturalization and how is it distinct from how, the other ways in which people can get citizenship?
Basically, you are a non-South African, but you've been living in the Republic, and then I guess you understand the nature of South Africans, you know how things were, and then you will finally submit an application to the Department of Home Affairs, and if they are satisfied that you meet the requirements to be naturalized, then you will be a South African by naturalization. But as a baseline, you are not a South African when you apply for naturalization.
All right. So I suppose the next natural question is, could this be the path that Chidimma could take?
Yeah. It's a path that is available to her. She can simply claim, I was born here. I know how things are done here. I take myself to be South African. She can then submit that particular application. But what is prima facie, according to my reading of the matter, is that she is not. And I said this must not be taken to be preempting the investigations by the department.
Yeah, fair enough. What is not lost to us, of course, is that what allegedly took place was a good 23 years ago. Some time has passed, dare I say, perhaps some people may have passed. How difficult would it be for the department to get to the bottom of what took place and to hold people accountable? Because if, of course, Chidimma's mother did commit fraud and identity theft, she couldn't have done it alone.
Absolutely. Where there is prima facie evidence of commission of an offense, that in my view already casts all sorts of aspersions over the participation of Chidimma. And the investigation must be thorough, it must be done expeditiously. As you have said, the competition should be running as soon as possible. Imagine, Ayanda, if she was to win, considering how South Africans are feeling about migration. Most South Africans do not understand migration. There are all sorts of allegations that people from outside South Africa are creating tension, they are stealing jobs and all sorts of things. So imagine if she was to win, then that will be a spanner in the works, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, Chidimma and Miss SA are at the center of the storm, but it raised so many other issues. And I guess we'll have to wait and see how it all unfolds. Mkhosi Radebe, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Really do appreciate your insights, given, as I mentioned, what we know and what we don't know. Mkhosi Radebe is, of course, the director at MC Incorporated, I beg your pardon. Let me just get that right for you. He's the director at MC Radebe and Associates Incorporated. There you go. And yeah, I think there are a whole lot more questions now than we did perhaps have 24 hours ago, and it makes it more urgent for the Home Affairs Department to put some kind of lid on that speculation.